Sawubona mngani. Welcome back to Zulu Lessons with Thando, the place for modern conversational Zulu language lessons. Let's talk about counting things. Now, when we are counting things, then we would definitely be describing a noun using a number. So basically, a number adjective is what we are talking about. So when we are saying one person, in English, that one is basically describing the person, it's telling us how many people there are. Now, when we are saying this in isiZulu, the prefix will keep changing depending on the class of noun. So what we will do is we will use a story from the africanstorybook.org website. Remember, keep in mind, the website is not mine. I do not have any ownership or any partnership with the website. I just simply use the books that are free for anybody in the public to use. So let's go ahead. I will now share my screen and show you the story. The story is titled Kungaki. 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 Kungaki means how many? Simply. Now, let's break down this word itself. Ngaki, let's just leave this KU for a moment. Ngaki means how many. So if I was asking how many people are there, remember people, abantu. So how many people? Abantu, abangaki. So I would say bangaki. How many are there? Bangaki. You see, isandla is a hand, izandla are hands. Zingaki. Zingaki. Do you hear? The prefix is changed to zi, and before that it was ba. And here on this book it says kungaki is a general term. We are not specifically saying hands or whatever the noun may be. We are just speaking in general terms. Kungaki. That's why we put in the ku. But when we are now wanting to be specific to the noun, then we change and make sure that we use the correct prefix for that noun. That is why it is so very important to know the subject concords for each class, whether singular or plural. Now let's go ahead and get started. Amabhungezi. Amabhungezi amabili anemilenze emingaki. So beetles, amabhungezi, if it was one, we know because it starts with an AMA, we know that it would have been I for one, ibhungezi, but now it's more than one, amabhungezi. And look at the number. What happened to the number? The number also changed. There is the root of the number, bili, and we are saying amabili because we are saying amabhungezi. And we are saying how many legs do they have? Anemilenze. See, amabhungezi amabili anemilenze. How many legs do they have? Now look at the question here. Emingaki. Emingaki. This is what's going to help us to construct our answer. We've put in a to show that this is an adjective that we are going to use. Now, let's go now to our notes. Now, how many are they? Simply kungaki. Now, we are asking how many legs do two beetles have? How many legs? So, umlenze, that's one leg. Imilenze, that's more than one leg. So plural. Ngaki is how many. But now let's look at how we've put that together. Emingaki. This mi here, that mi is speaking to imilenze. That mi in imilenze. Emingaki, that E, that's our subject, that's our adjective. Oh, how am I pronouncing this? That is our adjective. So that is that is what's going to help us to put the answer together. So we want to say two beetles have, and then we give the answer. Let's see now. Let's go back to the story to figure out how many legs are there. So let's count ngesiZulu. When we count, we use the general numbers. Kunye, kubili, kuthathu. That KU is general. It doesn't specify what it is that we are counting. So let's go ahead. Kunye, kubili, kuthathu, kune, kuhlanu, isithupha, isikhombisa, isishiyagalombili, isishiyagalolunye, ishumi, ishumi nanye, ishumi nambili. 12. So in English, we would simply say 12 legs. So now let's answer this question. Amabhungezi amabili. Amabhungezi amabili anemilenze engamashumi amabili. Amabhungezi amabili anemilenze engamashumi amabili. Look at that E. That E is quite important. That's the same E that we saw in emingaki. That E is describing the noun. Amabhungezi anemilenze engamashumi amabili. So remember, what we are now focusing on is no longer the beetle itself, but rather the legs of the beetle. That's what we are talking about. So you've got to always remember that. What exactly am I talking about? So if I say, how many legs does a person have? I'm not talking about the person anymore. I'm not talking about the person's legs. So you must always make sure you're focusing on what your subject really is, so that you know how to answer your question. So we said engamashumi amabili, so 12 legs. So two beetles have 12 legs. Now let's look at that question. Bangaki, how many are they? That's when we are talking about people, the example I made for you earlier. And this one here was saying emingaki. Do you hear that? Emingaki, because we're saying imminent. Bangaki, abantu. Abantu, babili. There are two people, you see? So we always have to make sure that we know what the subject concord is, because that is what will help us to construct our answer or our response. So now let's look at the different ways we could be saying this in counting different nouns. So pay attention to this, then it will help you with your question as well if you are wanting to ask a question. So look at this one for class 1 and class 1A. I've mentioned in the past that these two, although class 1A starts with just a U or an O, and class 1 starts with an UM, L, and ABA. But when we are now speaking about them, using them in sentences, everything else is the same, exactly the same. So look at this. Abantu bangaki, how many people? Omama bangaki, how many women? Do you see? Bangaki, because it's really the same noun, the same type of noun. Look at this one. Imizi mingaki. Do you see that? Imizi. So that that's what we are using for the question word. We add that mi on the question word ngaki. Amabhola mangaki. Hey, do you see that? How many balls? Do you see that? Mangaki. it's speaking to amabhola. Izikhwama zingaki? Z. There it is. Zingaki. Izingane zingaki? Izimpondo zingaki? Now we can't now count these ones because they are uncountable. You cannot count. Can you imagine? How can you count ukuthula, peace, silence? You can't count that. That's uncountable. So we move on from those. Now let's go back to our little story that will help us with this topic. Izinyoni ezine zinamaphiko amangaki? Izinyoni ezine zinamaphiko amangaki? Do you hear I keep saying z, z, z? It's very important to know the subject concord. It will help you with subject-verb agreement. Look at this now. Izinyoni, birds. Ezine, 4. Zinamaphiko, that's z. Zinamaphiko amangaki? How many wings are there in 4 birds? Now let's have a look. Kunye, kubili, kuthathu, kune, kuhlanu, isithupha, isikhombisa, isishiyagalombili. 8. There are 8 wings in 4 birds. So let's put that answer together in the isiZulu. I'm going to type it here so you can see. Izinyoni ezine zinamaphiko ayisishiyagalombili. Izinyoni ezine zinamaphiko ayisishiyagalombili. The importance of subject-verb agreement. I cannot stress it enough. Now, let's look at this here. We are saying isishiyagalombili. There is the answer, the number itself. Isishiyagalombili. That number cannot now just go on its own and we say isishiyagalombili. So to now put something here to help us to merge these two together, because we cannot have 2 vowels following each other in isiZulu. So then we put in this Y. Ayisishiyagalombili. So that's basically our answer. There are 8 wings between 4 birds. And let's continue. Obhejane abathathu banezimpondo ezingaki? Obhejane abathathu banezimpondo ezingaki? Hey, there used to be a song. I think it was a kwaito song. Uphondo lukabhejane. Uphondo lukabhejane. Hey, I remember that song. That's so long ago. Anyway, uphondo is a horn. So uphondo lukabhejane is a rhino's horn. So anyway, it's a rhino. Right, it's a rhino. It's a rhino. Why did I write hippo here when it's a rhino? Wait! At one point I write hippo and another point I wrote rhino. I don't know. So, how many horns are there between 3 rhinos? Right? Now we need to know what the noun is. The noun is ubhejane when it's 1, obhejane when it's more than 1. It's a plural. So obhejane, then we would say aba, just the same as you would say maybe with, say for example, udadewethu, odadewethu, and then we would say abathathu if you've got 3 sisters, right? So now we would say obhejane abathathu. Do you see? That aba goes with o, now a noun that begins with the plural o. So now let's go on. We said ba nezimpondo. Ba nezimpondo. That ba, subject verb agreement. And ezingaki. Ezingaki. Look at the question. We are no longer talking just about the rhino itself, ubejane. We are now talking about the horns on ubejane. So that's why our question is speaking to this part. Izimpondo ezingaki. So now let's go ahead on and answer the question. So we said, how many rhinos? We said 3 rhinos. So let's go ahead and see. How many rhinos do we see? Let's count. NgesiZulu. Asibale. Did you hear that? Asibale. Let us count. Kunye, kubili, kuthathu, kune, isihlanu, isithupha. 6. Isithupha. Now let's say this in a sentence. Let's put it together in a sentence and say 3 rhinos have 6 horns. Let's make some room and let's put that in there. Obejane abathathu banezimpondo ezi. I'm going to put a plus sign here. I want to talk about it because we just spoke about it just now. Ezi isithupha. Isithupha. So what do we put here? Remember, we cannot have 2 vowels following each other in isiZulu. We can't just say ezi isithupha. You see? So what do we put in? Because the number is starting with an I, we put in a Y, just like we did just the last one here we worked on. Now here we are, eziyisithupha. Izimpondo eziyisithupha. That's basically our answer. The next one is izindlovu ezinhlanu zinemiboko emingaki. Izindlovu ezinhlanu zinemiboko emingaki. So umboko or imiboko, plural, is an elephant trunk. Now we are asking how many are they in 5 elephants. So let's look at our question. Izindlovu, that Z, the ZI or the ZI, that is our subject concord. That is what's going to keep going on throughout. This is what will follow us with our question. Let's look at it. Izindlovu ezinhlanu, look at that Z. Zinemiboko, do you see it? Now look at this. We don't have Z anymore here because our focus here has changed from izindlovu to the actual thing we need to count. What we need to count is imiboko. So that's why now suddenly the subject concord is now mi. There we go. Or one could say adjectival concord, but that's a lot to say. Adjectival concord, subject concord. So anyway, so emiboko emingaki. That's what we are asking. So let's count them. Kunye, kubili, kuthathu, kune, kuhlanu. 5. Hlanu. So how do we put that answer now and say it in a sentence? Remember your subject concord or your adjectival concord. So let's see. Make some space. So, izindlovu ezinhlanu zinemiboko. And we said how many? 5. Hlanu, right? Hlanu, that's the root of the number. Hlanu, let's just put the root so that you see it. Now, we want to say has 5 chunks. So now let's go ahead and put it in. What do we start with to show that this is an adjective? We start with the letter E. And then what's the subject concord or adjectival concord for imibogo? It's mi. And there we go. Zinemibogo emihlanu. Zinemibogo emihlanu. Now another thing, if you are not answering this in a long question like I am doing here, not in a long form answer, you just wanted to give me a short sentence, you would simply just say Zinemibogo emihlanu. So you would start your answer right here. Zinemibogo emihlanu. They have 5 chunks. That's simply what you would say. But this is a much longer, fuller sentence. Izindlovu ezinhlanu zinemibogo emihlanu. Wait. Ima kancane. We have 2 words here that talk about the number 5, but they are not the same. They don't look the same and they don't sound the same. Let's talk about that for a second. Here we have the number 5, izindlovu ezinhlanu, so 5 elephants. Imibogo emihlanu, 5 chunks. Why does it change for this one and doesn't change for this one? When we count, we say uhlanu. Why do we change here? So all the ones where the plural is easy, where the noun's plural is easy, the number will always be zinhlanu, right? All the time. So from class 5 nouns, that's what we will have. They change. Even other adjectives, they change. So if you go back to the videos that talk about adjectives and we're saying, for example, beautiful, and we are using a noun that is in that class, like for example, indlovu, let's say indlovu, and we are saying beautiful or cute. And also keep in mind that an elephant is my favorite land animal. So it definitely is cute. So we want to say a cute elephant. Then what do we say? Indlovu enhle. Indlovu enhle. So what would you say if you were saying a beautiful person? Umuntu omuhle. Do you see that the same adjective, the root stays there, it's the same, but what has changed is the prefix of the adjective. For class 5 nouns, we will keep having that N that also changes the pronunciation of the word. So now from hle to nhle, from hlam to nhlan. Do you hear that? Nhlan. Look at my face, how I shape my face and mouth when I say the number. Hlanu, nhlan. Do you see the difference? Do you hear the difference? So practice that. Now, we will stop there for this. You can continue. The story doesn't end there. So continue with the story and answer for yourself and make me see what your answers are below. Look at that. We're talking about izinja. And remember, when we are now counting, we will be talking about amadlebe, not just simply inja. We are not counting the dog. And here we are talking about izinkawu, but pay attention when you make your answer that you are not talking about, you are not counting izinkawu, you are counting their tails in misila. So make sure that when you conjugate your answer, it corresponds to that. Amakati, that's about amakati, but what are we going to be counting? We are going to be counting their eyes, but these are the most vicious looking cats I've ever seen. Anyway, that's just me. Look, ishongololo, it's so cute. Ishongololo, but we are not going to be counting ishongololo, we'll be counting its legs. So imi legs. So make sure that when you now count or to work out your answer, then you make sure that it is conjugated to imi legs, to the correct noun. So go ahead and put your answer in the comments below. I was really, really looking forward to see what you would come up with. But anyway, I'll give you a hint for this one. The hint for this one is the answer would be many. Because ain't nobody gonna sit here and count all these legs. Ha. Ha. No, we're not zoologists. We're just learning how to say these things, Mrs. So, usale kahle mngani.